Greetings. This is Doc Ock coming at you live and direct from Black Facts Headquarters Central with the latest and the greatest from the world of Black Facts. Tubular Black Facts to be exact, because we are on the Tubular Black Facts channel. You are on the Tubular Black Facts channel right now. So if you want to always make sure that you catch what we're doing and are able to participate in all of our online activities, go ahead and subscribe to the Tubular Black Facts channel. Meanwhile, we're going to go ahead and handle our business by sharing with you some tropes from our featured stories of the month, which are all going to be coming from the Book of Crosby. That's right, the Book of Crosby, the father of Black History Month. And we're going to start off with a trope of one of Dr. Crosby's favorite tropes. We'll be doing at least one a day, if not two a day, for the entire month of November, recognizing and commemorating his 89th year, the 89th year since his birth. And so the first one is every trip of the train. Every trip of the train. And you have to say it just like that, otherwise it loses all its meaning if you don't say every trip of the train. So you got to emphasize that every. All right. Enough said there. I don't think we need any interpretation on that one. So let's go ahead and move on and groove on with our story of the month, which is, like I said, coming from the Book of Crosby. Now let's see. We got everything all tuned up this time, so we're ready to go. And what we're going to do is, we had read from Dr. Crosby's book, his autobiography, previously, actually 1 year ago exactly, in November, celebrating his 88th birthday. This year, we're going to try to pick up from where we left off. We don't recall exactly where we left off. I don't have that volume in front of me right now. So I'm going to use an online version or a digital version of the book. And we're going to start with the beginning of chapter 5, where Dr. Crosby is still trying to figure out where is he going to go with this whole German thing, because he's deeply involved with the study of the German language, literature, and medieval history. That's what he got his doctorate degree in. And so he goes to get some advice from one of his professors. And as he writes here, on another occasional visit, Dr. Morse asked me if I would allow him to ask a good friend of his, Dr. Berzel, who happened to be the chair of the German department at the University of Kansas, about my becoming a PhD candidate in his department. I recognize his suggestion as more than just a nudge for me to go for an additional and terminal degree. I took his suggestion as a soft warning. If I didn't seek and receive a terminal degree, my tenure at Hiram could be cut short. There were other persons on Hiram's faculty who didn't possess a terminal degree. However, they were all white. I, being the odd man out, had to demonstrate I was more or at least as capable as they. The handwriting was now on the wall. I read the message and decided to act accordingly. Just as I was putting the finishing touches on my master's thesis, I applied for the prestigious Fulbright Fellowship to study for at least a year at Freiburg University in West Germany. I also backed up Drs. Morris's and Schroeder's suggestions by applying for a graduate assistantship in the University of Washington's German department to study for the PhD. Before long, I received notice. I had not won a Fulbright Fellowship. However, I was awarded a highly recognized fellowship from the Deutsche Akademische Aust Austauschdienst, Austauschdienst, the German academic exchange service, and an assistantship from the University of Washington in Seattle. To top all these offers, Dr. Berzel offered me not only admittance to his department, but also funding in the form of a lucrative National Defense Fellowship. In the form of a lucrative National Defense Fellowship. Just before I learned of these acceptances, I had learned my application to Ohio State had been turned down. Even with Professor Schroeder's strong recommendation as an OSU alum. Of course, I wanted to study in Germany and in turn improve my fluency, but I decided to attend the University of Kansas instead, for it was closer to home. Didn't call for the possible outlay of funds I just didn't have, awarded more money to defray living and tuition costs, and more importantly, allowed me to stay home with Shirley and my 2-year-old son, Edward Michael Crosby, now known as Kofi Kemet. That's Khemet, in case you're wondering. In 1960, Hiram College granted me a 2-year leave of absence to attend the University of Kansas, where I earned the PhD in German literature and languages with a concentration in medieval history in 1965. My dissertation should still reside in the University of Kansas Graduate School Library or in the library's archives in Lawrence, Kansas. Just before I left Kansas in 1962, after completing all coursework and the preliminary exams for the PhD, a fellow PhD candidate in biology who was a graduate of Booker T. Washington's Tuskegee Institute suggested I seek a position teaching German there and offered to submit my name and resume. Booker Taliaferro Washington, an African American who had been born a slave, became a dominant black educator, author, orator, and advisor to United States Republican presidents on issues confronting the American black community from 1890 until his death in 1915. His influence on black people's affairs lasted for many years after his death. However, given the racist turmoil taking place throughout the South and North, for that matter, I felt I needed to experience the current racial turmoil in the South. Shirley was not as convinced as I. My 3-year-old son, Edward Michael, couldn't have cared less. Before long, I received an invitation to an interview with Dr. Sanders Walker, chair of Tuskegee's English and Modern Languages Department in Chicago at a Modern Language Association conference. I mentioned to Dr. Walker that I was still working on my PhD, on my dissertation, and expected to finish it during my first year at Tuskegee. He assured me that would not be a problem. We went on asking more questions and giving more answers. After a not too much longer interview, he offered me a position teaching German and Spanish. Right then, I told Dr. Walker when it came to salary, I would accept $4,900, which was the 12-month salary I would have received. The 12-month salary I would have received in 9 months at Hiram. That was a mistake because I didn't ask what the teaching load at Tuskegee was, nor did I ask about the length of the Institute's school year, or more specifically, how my salary would be computed. Those were serious mistakes on my part, for Tuskegee's contract year and therefore my salary were not clearly defined. And when I approached the administration Tuskegee's vice president reluctantly offered me an unrealistic resolution to the problem, which forced me into employing a subterfuge of which I was not very proud. I had only been working full-time in academia for 2 years and thought all colleges and universities operated similarly. When it came to the contract year, for instance, at Hiram and Kent, faculty salaries were based on 9 months. However, the salary was divided into 12 equal payments. The result being you didn't have to seek employment over the 3-month summer vacation if you didn't want or need to. Had I asked Dr. Walker, I would have learned Tuskegee's contracts were for 11 months, without exception. Had Dr. Walker been on top of his game, or had I not been a neophyte at being interviewed, I would have inquired about Tuskegee's contract year and how my salary would be affected. That would have avoided the situation that ensued. As it turned out, I learned all faculty were obligated to teach summer school to earn their full year 11-month salary. So I started teaching at the Institute, not knowing I had a serious salary problem coming up. My wife Shirley had no aversions and could handle living in the South. Her parents were native Southerners, and she had regularly visited her grandparents and other relatives in Atlanta during the summers when she was younger and when schools in Cleveland were not in session. On occasion, she and her family, including relatives and at times family friends, would attend family reunions in Atlanta. She knew the Southern black culture and how to navigate the white culture there as well. White people were the same all over, the only difference in the South being their penchant towards violence against black folks was more easily aroused than in the North, particularly in the 50s. It may be needless to point out, but these were troubling times, to say the least, in Alabama and the South in general. When we arrived in Alabama, I had to learn to control my mouth. Some time ago, when my parents and I were going to visit my brother, Fred, in Fort Campbell, Kentucky, a few miles from the border of Tennessee, I was driving at the age of 17 or 18. At the time, I had a youthful liking for being smart alecky at the wrong time and place. As I drove the car closer to Fort Campbell in Tennessee, I noticed we needed to fill up, so I was directed to pull over into the next station. When the attendant came, I announced flippantly, "Fill her up and don't spill any on the car." My father almost died on the spot, but he was cool. He was cool until after the tank was filled and I drove off. My mother remained silent. Then the storm raged. I can't repeat everything my father said because it's really inappropriate. I do remember, however, that he called me everything but a child of God. I said I was sorry, but that wasn't enough. My father knew we were approaching the South, something I had so stupidly not recognized. All of his memories as a boy in the South had returned. All those countless times he'd been instructed not to show the least amount of anything that might be considered disrespectful towards white folks. Especially white women. Indeed, Daddy must have witnessed or heard of tragic and brutal lynchings of other black youths and adults when he was young in whatever state he came from, because we don't know, because Daddy left riding the rails up under the train from wherever he lived in the South all the way to Chi-Town. That's right, at 13 years old. Lynchings were common in the South then, and he didn't want to see another, and he sure didn't want to be another. Well, I had never been so trained. This was the first time I had ever even been close to a Southern state. Oh, my mother had tried to train me and my brothers and sister not to be disrespectful to any people, white or black, and especially not to their elders. I witnessed my brother, Richard, receiving a solid blow from her when he made a disparaging remark to one of her friends who was visiting at the time. I suffered through my comeuppance and remembered it when my wife and son were driving through Arkansas and then Mississippi and finally Alabama on our way to Tuskegee in 1962. I had just finished my studies for the PhD that summer at the University of Kansas. Indeed, when we traveled through Missouri and left Arkansas, my wife and I became silent when we entered Mississippi and hoped we didn't have to buy any gas until we reached Alabama, forgetting that Alabama was just as bad, if not twice as bad, as Mississippi. We referred to the combination as Alamissy and assiduously structured the attention we paid to people and happenings around us accordingly. Whatever Shirley and I enjoyed living and teaching at and in Tuskegee Institute, Alabama. My experiences working with my students in Alabama, were fulfilling. My relations with faculty members and some administrators presented some difficulties, however. This was particularly evident when it came to some older Southern-born faculty. I was invited to a faculty and staff social after I'd been on the campus for maybe about a month. And at this social, I was introduced to several individuals, and we had some interesting conversations. On one occasion, I was talking to an older woman, a faculty member, who was informing me about her experiences teaching at Tuskegee. Then, after a short while, she addressed me as Dr. Crosby. At first, I thought I should ignore it, but I decided to correct her politely, letting her know I didn't yet have a doctorate degree, but that it was on its way. This revelation apparently stunned her so much, she immediately cut off all conversation and communication and walked off. This abrupt, where was I at? Lost my way. There it is. This abrupt closure puzzled me at first. This abrupt closure puzzled me at first. Then I realized my not having a doctorate had violated a class issue. This was my first introduction to a piece of some black academics culture in the South 50 some years ago. I came from a family and community that respected people, particularly black folks who had achieved some status due to their advanced age or some other mark of distinction, such as being a doctor or college professor, dentist, a teacher, postal clerk, or politician. On occasion, distinction was also conferred on those who held status in the underground economy, such as successful numbers runners or bookies like my daddy. But this distinction didn't allow them to diminish others. And when I say my daddy, I mean my granddaddy, because my daddy was not a numbers runner, but his daddy was. So, at any rate, that's our the beginning of this month's series, and we'll be continuing on tomorrow with reading from the Book of Crosby, and that's just the name of the series. That is not the name of his autobiography. He gave it a much longer name, which could be a dissertation all by itself. But when it finally gets published, which apparently I will have to do, I will try to shorten that down some and see if we can make it a little bit more concise. But if you know Dr. Crosby, you know he's a very wordy individual. He loves languages, and he loves to use languages in a number of different ways, no matter who he's talking to or where he might be at. He could easily slip into German, Russian, French, Spanish, Kiswahili, or just straight, what can I say? I have the name for that. Oh yeah, that's right, Niglish. That's what I was thinking of. Some Niglish. He could do that at the drop of a hat, or he could go straight academic on you and be talking over or under your head, or just all around you, and maybe at some point there would be some things that would connect. But at any rate, meanwhile, we're going to go ahead and close out right here. We'll be back tonight with more stories. We can't say exactly what those stories are going to be yet because we haven't decided. So it'll just have to be a surprise when you show up tonight. But we will have some good stories for the rest of the month. And then last but not least, if you haven't done it already, make sure to sign up, subscribe to our Tubular Black Facts channel. Peace out without a doubt. This is Doc Ock at noon and 9 signing off as we go into our extra. And here we go.